There are things I can't force. I must adjust. There are times when the greatest change needed is a change of viewpoint.
Do you remember the feeling of getting your college acceptance letter? Now, maybe you had gotten into that school online, but the feeling of rushing home from some meaningless day late in your senior year, the big envelope already waiting for you there on your kitchen table. Maybe there was a water bottle in there, or a t-shirt, a lanyard, or a bumper sticker, some memento of the place you'd spend the next 4 years. For many college-age students, this might be one of the only positive or memorable experiences you've ever had with the Postal Service. But in reality, it's just such a small part of what we do and how we've impacted almost every American life and beyond. So with that in mind, I want to start this off with a percentage, 48%. Each year, the United States Postal Service delivers roughly 48% of the world's mail volume. In the year 2019, that was almost 150 billion pieces of mail. But why so much, and why so much more here than anywhere else? Well, for starters, every day of the week, regardless of distance, weather, or cost, letter carriers from the USPS reach every business and residential address in the United States. It's part of something called our Universal Service Obligation. What that basically means is that we go everywhere. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how nice your neighborhood is. If you live there, we go there, and we deliver with the same security and promptness that you've come to expect from us. Everything from people's medications, tax returns, their government stimulus checks, and even things you order online after you've had a couple too many drinks. And we collect mail on all of our routes too. Wedding invites, thank you cards, Christmas letters, packages from people that have moved their businesses into their homes during the pandemic, and of course, people's mail-in ballots. It's one of the reasons that we're consistently voted America's most trusted government agency, year after year, even as trust in the government has continued to decline. In fact, people trust us so much that in between the years of 1913 and 1915, there are at least 7 documented stories of people asking letter carriers to ship their children for them. Kind of gives you a sense of how people feel about the Postal Service. Hi, I'm Luca Serio. I'm a senior at Syracuse University, and I'm a former letter carrier for the United States Postal Service. I personally came into this job last May without a lot of other options or summer work, and for me, it's been pretty much a perfect fit. Reliable hours, great coworkers, a historic union, a chance to be outside every day, and frankly, a pretty good Halloween costume too. Of course, it doesn't come without hard work. Any new carrier can expect to work between 60 and 70 hours a week, and some weeks without a day off at all. In the month of January alone, I walked on average 9 miles a day, with the longest of those coming in at just below 13. Now, to give you a sense of what 13 miles feels like, well, start here, the Westcott Theater, and walk all the way to the Carrier Dome, and back, 5 times. Now, let's just say, for the sake of the hypothetical, that it's 35 degrees out, pouring rain, and everything you're carrying is made out of paper. Sounds like fun, right? Not exactly. In fact, I spent so much time outside this past winter, and the dryness of the air mixed with the paper mail took all the moisture out of my hands to the point that I had to redo the Touch ID on my phone because my fingerprint started to erode. But I'm not just here to talk about how far I can walk, or the fact that my phone is so old it still uses Touch ID, or even the fact that without fingerprints, I'd be the next great American serial killer. But I'm more so here to say that after working for the Postal Service for all of last summer and for another 2-month stint this past December, I really feel that people our age, and some younger, and probably even some older, don't have a good grasp on what it is that we do, how we work. And in my mind, it's to the longevity of America's most beloved government agency. Now, that said, I can see some of the ways in which the mail stream is mysterious. It's probably not something you've ever needed to think about a lot, and in my mind, that's a good thing. It means we're doing our jobs well, and we're doing them right. Every day when you get home from school or work, the mail should already be there in a box on the curb by your driveway, in a slot in your front door, or in the mailroom of your apartment building. But as times change and the way the world does business has continued to evolve, it's fundamentally impacted our service. Websites like eBay, Etsy, just simple things, email, text message, recently Zoom. As the way the world communicates changes, it's changed the way that we serve those people. Maybe you've also seen headlines about the financial trouble facing the Postal Service right now, or maybe the decommissioning of mail sorting machines across the United States. And while I have you here, we're going to talk about some of that too. Now, one of the largest financial barriers for the Postal Service is the amount of our workforce that's aging. The average age of a letter carrier is 48, 10 years older than that of other courier services like FedEx, DHL, and UPS. Now, the reason that creates a problem is the nature of being a letter carrier has dramatically changed in the last 2 decades. Postal Service data shows that first-class mail volume has decreased by almost half since the year 2000, a trend that was accelerated by both the financial crisis in 2008 and the pandemic just this past year. People and businesses just don't send letters like they used to. Now, on the contrary, the meteoric rise of Amazon and other online retailers that use courier services has dramatically increased the number of packages we deliver. The Pew Research Center found that the number of packages the Postal Service delivers has doubled in the last decade. To give you a sense of what that looks like, well, with the pandemic forcing most Christmas shopping to happen online this year, there would be days in January and December where I would clock in at 6 o'clock in the morning and not leave till 8 o'clock at night without delivering a single letter, just delivering packages so that other carriers could actually deliver the mail for these routes. And there were a lot of post offices all across the United States that were in even worse shape than ours was. Now, the reason this creates an issue is because almost everything about being a mailman, from the length of our routes, the size of our trucks, the way that we're taught how to walk when we first get trained, even the size of a mailbox, all of these things were designed with delivering letters in mind, and not to have to accommodate packages like we do now. You can see this pretty clearly reflected in the vehicles we drive. Now, this is the Grumman LLV, or long life vehicle. It's kind of what you think of when you see a mail truck. Sliding doors for getting in and out quickly, the steering wheel on the right side, and a tray for flats and letters up front next to the driver. Now, they were first designed in 1987, and they continued to be made until 1994, and they were only supposed to last for 20 years. So it's pretty remarkable that in the year 2021, I can still clock into work, get inside of one, and carry mail all day long. It gives new meaning to the name long life vehicle. And oddly enough, not much about these guys have changed. In 2006, Ford released its own model, the FFV, but the big change came in 2015 when the Postal Service added the Ram ProMaster to our fleets. As you can see, this is a cargo van, and that is a reflection of package volume. These are probably the kind of mail trucks you've seen in and around campus. Now, the last vehicle I have on this slide is more something to be hopeful for, and something you may have seen on the internet recently, the specs for an electric postal vehicle. Now, while it is one of this administration's goals to electrify as much of the government fleet as possible, I have no idea when we might have a chance to see one of these on the curb outside of your house. Now, getting back into letter carriers for a second, what does the average letter carrier look like? Well, not such a simple question to answer. For starters, we're one of the largest employers of veterans in the United States. They make up about 16% of our workforce. Similarly, the Pew Research Center found that in 18 states and the District of Columbia, more than half of postal employees are women, including my home state of Maine. And lastly, only 57% of the postal workforce is white, compared to 78% of the national workforce. It's not perfect, but we're getting better at reflecting the people that we serve every day. Now, when I first agreed to do a TED Talk about working for the USPS, one of the things I was most concerned about was clearing up the number of misconceptions I saw about our services, particularly leading up to the 2020 election. People work in civil service with ballots. There were misconceptions saying it was just downright unsafe to deliver your ballot through the mail service at all, and others saying that the USPS was intentionally decommissioning mail sorting machines across the United States to slow down the delivery of ballots. And while I have you here, I want to address some of these concerns. And I should disclaim that before I get started, I really can only speak in my own experience and from what I've seen. But the first one's easy. I mean, any letter you or I send is probably going to be first class. If you're putting a stamp on it, it's first class. That means it's deliverable anywhere in the United States, and if it can't be delivered where you sent it, it'll get sent back to you. Anywhere in the US, just for the cost of a stamp. In terms of overwhelming the Postal Service with ballots, well, this one's interesting too, because the letter volume for a route can change by 2 or 3 times, just depending on the day of the week or the time of year. I remember distinctly doing a route for the first time on the Tuesday after MLK Day. Now, we knew it would be heavy because it was the day after a holiday, but we didn't know it would be like this. For a route that usually got 2.5 trays of letters, I ended up getting 6.5 on that day. To give you a sense of what that looks like, well, a tray of letters is about 3 feet wide. And a letter, well, I'm sure you've seen one before. So you can conceptualize what 20 feet of letters looks like. Sure, it was a long day, but we got it done because that's what we're designed to do. So even if every registered voter on a route requested their ballots and they all came in around the same time, we'd be able to deliver them. That's what we're here for. Now, this last one, a lot of these concerns about it being unsafe to deliver your ballots were actually related to the fourth point. I saw misconceptions on social media about mail sorting machines being wired to pluck your ballot out of the sorting machine, to put it off to the side, to somehow the Postal Service knew who was voting for who. But I know, at least for my post office, that when I grab a ballot from your house and I bring it back to the post office that night with the rest of my outgoing mail, well, the clerk is going to separate it out from the rest of the outgoing, put it in a separate bin, and that night, when all the carriers come back from their routes, drive it straight to town hall. No mail sorting machines involved whatsoever. Voting by mail has been, and hopefully will continue to be, one of the safest ways to vote. And in terms of the fourth rumor on this slide, well, there's actually some truth in this one. Because of the mail volume decrease we've already talked about, the decision was made in mail sorting plants all across the United States to decommission some mail sorting machines to make space on plant floors for more packages. To give you some context, a mail sorting machine can be the size of an 18-wheeler. So it's no question that when some of these machines were just collecting dust, the post office opted to get rid of them. However, even with all of these concerns addressed, I still think one of the largest turnoffs of the Postal Service for young people is actually having to go to the post office. It's confusing, it's a time suck, and it's downright annoying. You have to wait in line. If you fill out the wrong form, you get kicked to the back. I mean, even with the pandemic, people are even less inclined to want to stand in public places. However, in the modern day and age, you can get everything you need to use the Postal Service without ever stepping foot inside of a brick and mortar post office. Because you can buy stamps at the drugstore or the grocery store. And funny enough, now there are websites that will that will mail you stamps. And if you want to send a package, well, as long as you know the weight and the dimensions of the package, you can just put it on your porch once you've printed a shipping label for it. And that day, when a letter carrier is assigned to the route that you live on, they'll get a slip in the morning saying that there's a package on that address. And when they bring you your mail for the day, they'll grab it and bring it back to the post office with them. Change is slow, but we're evolving. Now, speaking of evolving, in 1971, with the formation of the modern Postal Service, it was decreed that the USPS would receive 0 tax dollars. None. It helps us stay nonpartisan and independent. We support ourselves entirely with the sale of postage, stamps, packages. In fact, in the year 2019, the USPS sold almost $13 billion worth of mail and mail-related services. So, how then did the USPS get into so much debt? Well, that's a great question. And we're going to talk about one of those reasons. Now, the self-funding model worked, and it worked for a long time. We could make enough to keep the lights on, pay our employees a fair and living wage, upkeep our trucks and our routes, and buy us enough gas to get us to every address in the United States. In fact, it was profitable. So much so that in 2006, under the younger George Bush, Congress passed something called the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act into law. Now, the PAEA, among other things, basically required the Postal Service to put away over $70 billion over the next decade to pay for the cost of its own employees' retirements and pensions for 75 years into the future. No other government agency had this requirement. And to be fair, the Postal Service felt like this was achievable for how much it was making at the time. That was until 2008, in the financial crisis, and we see our first big decline in mail volume. Now, being any good law-abiding government agency, the Postal Service continued to put money away into this account until we no longer could. and it began defaulting on those payments in 2012. Now, lucky for us, the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act was repealed in 2020, but the debt largely still remains. And it's helped legitimize people's claims that we should privatize the Postal Service, contract out our routes to companies like FedEx and UPS, and let them decide who and how the mail gets delivered in the United States. Although in my estimation, there is no other company or organization on the face of the planet that's as well equipped to do what we do as we are. But more so to that point, we actually work with these companies every single day. For instance, if you wanted to send something 2-day shipping and it needed to go halfway across the country, it might end up on a FedEx or a UPS plane, even if you sent it through the USPS. And on the contrary, if you live in somewhere in rural Montana or even parts of the state of Maine, if the FedEx or UPS deems that your package is too small or too cost ineffective for them to want to deliver, they may give it off to a letter carrier, and we'll take it for the final leg for them. Similarly, if you were to order something online that weighed more than 70 pounds, it likely is going to get sent through FedEx or UPS or even DHL. Weight regulations help keep postal workers safe. And lastly, if you live in a part of the country like mine that's too small to have its own Amazon distribution plant, well, nearly everything that gets sent through Amazon comes through the United States Postal Service. Our government status helps keep our rates fixed, which keeps us accessible and affordable to the communities that we serve. So I hope I've answered some of your questions about what the post office is, how it works, and why it's important that it remains public, well-funded, and accessible for all Americans and beyond. If you're interested in supporting the Postal Service, well, you could work for us, although I understand most people don't have the time for that. So I implore you to do it a different way. Go buy a book of stamps and pay your bills by the mail or send someone you care about a letter. Grandparents will hold on to them forever. Friends love something that's handwritten in a digital world where everything vanishes immediately. And hey, you could even write one to your love interest. Now, no guarantee they won't still reject you, but it's a little more romantic than a DM. So go on, shoot your shot, support the Postal Service. Thank you.